James Curtin did a research assignment back in 2020. It was published, and they did the research on 138, I think it was, homes, and they checked the performance versus the design. And this is the performance gap that we talk about. So what they found was that the houses were performing 20 to 80% underneath what they were designed to. So this is back in the day when there was a 6-star. So you could have paid for a 6-star and you were getting a 1.2 star.
Hello and welcome to the Building Slayology Potty. My name is Jess Kismet and I am your host. Today on the show, I am joined by Michael Drage, the award-winning passive house and net zero building designer behind Reimagined Habitat. With Australians spending more time inside than ever before, Michael's work focuses on reimagining how our homes function, how they're built, and how they connect to the broader environment. Today, we're going to talk about design, science, materials, prefab, windows, and why Michael believes the future of Australian housing needs to look very different from the past. Welcome, Michael.
Thanks, Jess. It seems like we're going to cover a lot in an hour, so we'll do the best we can.
Let's get to it. So tell us a bit about yourself, stuff I haven't covered in the intro. Who
Sure.
are you? How did you get here?
So I'm actually a finance guy by background. I was in the investment industry for about 25 odd years and moved down to Canberra, kept getting out of Sydney, kept getting pulled back into the finance game. So I decided to retrain. And when I retrained, I wanted to follow the passion of design. I basically just started looking at global best practice. And when I went down that rabbit hole with no background really in design, it seemed to be that passive house was the global best practice standard for energy efficient homes and where the puck was going to go. So I just started with that. So, coming out of the investment world gives, I think, what I've been told is a bit of a different perspective because I look at everything around risk and research. Investment's all about risk and research. So I'm constantly looking about how do we de-risk the build? How do we de-risk the design? How do we de-risk a client spending money or us time? And that comes down to a hell of a lot of research as well. So yeah, I'm one of those people that finds rabbit holes and runs down them all the time.
That's an interesting take on design, is a finance background, because, people invest in homes as a financial strategy, right? But designing and building them is a different side of that same coin.
Yeah, and it's, from an investment point of view, whether it's your home or whether it's an investment property or whether it's, a block of units or whatever, we're working on some co-housing ones at the moment with all the rule changes in Sydney around the transport hubs. There's a lot of work around co-housing. So if we look at that at an investment point of view, the way that I look at it for then, you talked before about trying to democratize this stuff, is if we can take money out of the equation, then it becomes a question of why not, as opposed to why build a better home. So if we look at that and try to take risk out, try to find those pathways where we can take money out of the equation, I suppose, you could take the boy out of finance, but you can't take the finance out of the boy. Then hopefully by taking that out of the equation, we can help people to understand why they might build a better home.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yep. Fair enough. I mean, money is the, we'd like to think that comfort and design and the better building envelope is the priority, but money is often the priority. So we do definitely have to work around it, work with it.
I have an old business partner, a mentor who's unfortunately no longer with us, Tony, whose favourite comment used to be, "It's not about the money until it's about the money, and then it's only about the money."
Yeah, that resonates.
I don't know how many times I've given that line, but yeah, it's always true.
So the reason I actually asked you to come on to the podcast was a comment that I saw on LinkedIn. I'm interested in your work, but the thing that piqued my interest was something that someone said to you, someone from the volume builder space that called you and I believe asked you for help. Could you tell us that story?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I knew that one was going to be provocative enough to get a few people having a chat. This is going back a number of years ago when I was first on the journey, and it literally came the week after we put the website up. It was bizarre timing. But a guy who runs, I won't say, one of the top 10 builders in Sydney rang me up, and his comment to me was, "We build crap. We know we build crap, but we don't want to build crap anymore. Can you help us?" And
Wow.
you could have knocked me over with a feather when we had this conversation. I've had many, many, many conversations with this guy, their team, and other people in the volume building industry as well. And a lot of them, they just don't care, right? Some of them, it's just get it in, get it out. get the profit, get the margin. A lot of these guys run on very, very, very low margins. So it's all about the volume and discounts and all the rest. But what I found really interesting over this time is that some of the volume builders, they really do want to build better, but either they don't have the skill set, they don't have the knowledge base, because I think it's easy to come down. So for me, when I went into the classes, keep on slipping down. When I came into the industry, I started at Passive House, which is the extreme as far as performance goes. But it's easy to come backwards. Whereas if your benchmark is a 5-star home, then going to 6 stars is, oh my God, how the hell do we do that? And going to 7 stars is almost like doing your head in. And so trying to get the volume builders to turn their mindset to this and understand that, by the way, you might actually have to put some double glazing in, or you might actually have to think about the design where, you could pretty much turn up and get a 5-star home before. But I'll give you another example of this. So we picked up another top 10 builder, and they said, right, we're going to give you our most garbage one that we've got that's a problem one, and see if you can solve it, right? So, and I don't know how, but they had a 2.9-star home in Cronulla, down near the water.
Was it big?
Now, it was a massive void with a massive stairwell with windows either side and all the rest of it. So Jubin, who is my rocket scientist that works for me, he and I spent 20 hours trying to fix this thing. And this was one that was on the rollover, so I only had to meet 5 stars. Right?
So this was doing a NatHERS assessment, a star rating?
Yeah. So I only had to get the 5 stars. We had to do 20 design changes to get this thing to 5 stars. For those listening, most of it should be 7 stars. Some states are 6 at the moment, but it should be 7. We then, just for giggles, used some of the windows that we're importing at the moment, the high-performance windows, and said, right, what about if we just switch the windows? And if all we did was change the windows to our windows that we used, it went from 2.9 to 6.7.
Yeah.
With no design changes, no anything like that. But obviously, if you're going to have crap single-glazed windows as opposed to, high-performing windows, there's a financial cost. So this guy, the owner, accepted the 20 changes. And can I tell you, I wouldn't have lived in that house. To get it to actually meet it, it blocked out this and blocked out that and changed this. We weren't allowed to change the design at all. We could only sort of muck with windows and building envelopes and all the rest of it. But they built it, and we now do all their work as well.
So did they just, in order to get that star rating up, did they go with the more expensive windows, or did they cut their glazing down by half? Or
he didn't have the budget. It's about that whole thing about it's not about the money till it's about the money, right? So he didn't have the budget for it. The owner didn't have the budget for it, so they just built crap.
So how did you get it to 5 stars?
This was a couple of years ago now. So
cutting down the glazing?
we cut down the glazing and moved some.
Pretty much the only lever you've got to pull. Yeah.
Well, I mean, we're talking like, I can't remember the exact details, but there was like a 3.5 metre by 1.5 metre wide whole glazing west facing.
Yeah.
In Sydney. Yeah.
Was there a view?
And pardon?
Was there a view?
No.
No.
I went past the site just again for giggles. I went past the site just to check it, and I mean, it was a bit of a view, but nothing to do that.
Just somewhere to hang their chandelier.
We now do all their work, and they're very happy. And they're not building things like that anymore.
Good. That original builder that said to you, we build crap, did you help them? Did they take your advice on board?
Yeah. So it's been, they do. And so one of the biggest learnings with that has been, and this is one of the biggest struggles, and it's not just them, but it's pretty much every volume builder that we talk about. So a couple of them that I know are still talking about a 7-star upgrade package. Now, 7-star has been the baseline in New South Wales for quite a while now, and they still have 7-star upgrade packages. So they have a price, and then they have the 7-star one. And it's like, but guys, you got to do that. You already have to do that, but they're marketing and their sales. Exactly. So
it's all about the marketing spin.
But it's all about the marketing. And from what I've been told, it's such a competitive market that a couple of $1,000s either way will either win or lose you the job, because these volume builders are working on such tight margins. So they've got to get them in before they do the upgrade.
Yeah.
Excuse me.
I got
So
told
trying to
once.
change the, sorry.
Sorry, I got told once that by a volume builder here in South Australia when I was doing star ratings that $500 was enough to lose them a contract. It's
Yeah.
just so sensitive.
No, but it's changing that behaviour to try to get them. So with those guys in particular, what we've done is we've encouraged them that as early on in the design process is to get us involved. So if we can be in there early on, then we can help them at a design level, not just an energy rating point of view, because my team are all architects by background as well. So, they've actually got a bit of design sensibility. It's not just about crunching a number. So
And
we
that's
were
the
able
key
to get in there
message.
and yeah, yeah. So, it's not just we'll change this, push that because this is the number that you want. It's about, well, if we consider this or we consider that, how does that going to work at a design level? And I think that's quite important. So getting them involved really early is the absolute key. And since they've done that, then all of a sudden their salespeople come to us. We're having those conversations and they're not losing jobs. It's great.
Your team, what is it that so you said you've got architects, you are in design, you're in you're in sales as well, like product sales, and you're in prefab. There's this fair mix of services that you offer at Reimagined Habitat. Do you do all of them all the time? Do you have one main service?
So I deliberately set them up with three different names. So again, coming out of the investment world, I worked for, and don't slight me for this, but for the Macquaries and Investex of the world and whatever. And so being able to run in silos so that we can actually work with other professionals, I think is really important if we're going to provide all these. So, if a client comes to us for a design, then obviously we're going to be doing all the energy assessments as well, right? They may or may not choose to use the prefab and all the windows. If somebody comes to us for energy advisory work, they may choose to use one of the other services. But like most of our energy advisory work is with volume builders or other designers. And so we try to keep that very much siloed and a lot of apartments as well. But we try to keep that quite siloed. And then the prefab side of things, obviously, I'll tell you the story about prefab in a sec, but again, some of the work comes through our clients, but most of it's coming through other architects and designers outside of that and builders. So it's deliberately set up so we can engage with all parts of the building, the built environment, and for them to feel comfortable that we're not going to steal from one to the other. So therefore, having different branding so that somebody doesn't go, I've come to him for design or her for design, and I'm going to go over to you guys because I see you do design. It's very separate. It's very separate. But if you don't mind me just coming back to how we made it into the prefab side, that might sort of help a little bit. So started designing, didn't really understand it because I came from a different world. I was always known in my old businesses about research. So I set up this little research business, which has become Efficient Habitat, which is now the energy advisory business. And as we did all the work on that, we've done, God knows, I don't even know how many analyses. We did 512 passive house analyses just for one house, just to see how it would work, right, as a process.
How did you do that?
By
Using
hand.
the PHP? Using the PHP?
Yeah.
512?
I told you, I've
That
got a
must
rocket.
have taken decades.
No. So I have Juven is a rocket scientist. He's absolutely wonderful, and we have 6
actual
passive
rocket
house designers.
scientist.
Well, he could be if he wanted to.
Just a clever boy.
Yeah. No, he's an architect by background. He's also LEED qualified. He's doing his master's in sustainability at a university in Spain at the moment. He's quite a smart boy. But we have 6 passive house designers in house, so we can share the load with them. Anyway, so when we got through the research of it, the reality is that for a given design, the airtightness and the windows were the 2 biggest drivers of performance. When you can cut all the rest of it out. Once you got past design, they were the 2 biggest drivers. So I looked at risk and then said, right, so if I'm getting a client and whether it's 8-star, 3-star, passive house, whatever, what are we actually going to be? How do I de-risk that? And that came out of some other research that I've read, which I don't know whether you've seen the James Curtin research on as built versus as designed. I don't know whether you've ever seen that.
No, I haven't. I would love to read it.
So yeah, and I'm sorry for people who are going to listen to this and be quite put off the whole industry, but so James Curtin did a research assignment back in 2020. It was published, and they did the research on 138, I think it was, homes, and they checked the performance versus the design. But people listening, they probably don't know that when you get a star rating, a 7-star, 8-star, whatever, that star rating is based off the design and it is actually not tested at the back end. So,
Yes.
and
This
this
is
is
something that
the
we,
performance
yeah,
gap, the performance gap that we
yes,
talk about.
yeah.
What they found was that the houses were performing 20 to 80% underneath what they were designed to. So this is back in the day when there was a 6-star. So you could have paid for a 6-star and you were getting a 1.2 star.
Yeah, sounds about right.
And for somebody who comes out of the investment industry, them apples just don't add up.
Mm-hmm.
You do that systemically you deliberately and systemically underperform in the investment industry, you go to jail. Right? So my head is just not wired that way. It just makes no sense to me. And I tell my friends in the from the investment world, and they're like, "What? How the hell does that happen?" And it's like,
Because
"Yep,
no one
that's
checks.
what it is." Yep. And I talk to the builders here in this industry, and they go, "Yeah, sounds about right."
Yeah, yeah.
Like, you did. You
I'd
just
love to,
just a minute
I'd
ago.
love to, I'll link, if you could send me the link, or I'll look up on Google
I will.
the link
Yeah.
or the resource for that article, and I'll put it in the show notes. It's time for a quick sponsor shout out. Today's episode of the Building Sciology Poddy is proudly brought to you by our amazing sponsors, Enduro Builders and Climasure. A huge thank you to these incredible businesses for supporting the podcast and helping us spread the word about better buildings to live and breathe in. Your support makes this podcast possible. Please head over to their websites and follow their social pages.
So the only reason why I went down the path of prefab, right, and I've found other reasons since, but the only reason was to try to de-risk the build. So if I knew that the real performance was being driven, a big driver is airtightness, then how do we actually do that and take risk out of the build? And that's, you do something in a factory, there's less risk than trying to do it on site.
Uh-huh.
So that's the
Uh-huh.
only reason why we went down the prefab path, was just to try to de-risk the performance for our clients. It's become a thing since, because a lot of other people have worked that out as well. But, that's the only reason why we went. It was all about risk. It was all about
And
risk.
what is your wall assembly?
So I actually bring it in from Poland for for people who watch the grand designs and they see the big wall panels being sort of craned across. There's actually, I'm in WA at the moment because there's one happening about 300 meters that way at the moment. It's that same structure. So we've got, it's not plasterboard, but it's an equivalent. It's a fire-rated plasterboard on the inside with the airtight wrap, anywhere from 120 mil to 300 mil stud, depending on the performance required. So obviously 300 mil
Wow.
is pretty extreme, but if you want to go up to
That's, yeah.
Jindabyne, you can.
Yeah.
Wood fiber insulation in the middle of it all, so that the whole thing becomes a carbon sink. And
Mhm.
then again, depending on the moisture side of things, you might have OSB on the outside and then the external wrap, or you might have just the external wrap. And
Mhm.
then you literally batten and clad it like you normally would.
Yeah,
And
wow.
effectively you can do that. External walls, roof, floor, intermediate panels, everything's pretty much the same.
All in the same. Yeah. Oh, that sounds great. That sounds like a
So
really good system.
this house over here is 350 square meters. All the
Mhm.
walls went up in a day,
Mhm.
and the roof will take 2 days. So in 5 days, they'll go to the lockup, and 3 days to put the tin on, and it'll be completely ready to go.
Mhm.
And the owner was telling me today that there was a place around the corner, which I haven't seen, but it's been going for 8 months and only just put the key, only just that lockup now, but
Mm.
no plaster, no insulation, no anything. And so in a week, we're going to we're going to catch up and go past what they've spent 7 months on so far. So yeah, pretty
Goodness.
cool.
Yeah, prefab is definitely a massive advantage in speed.
And
That sounds like a really good
and
system. Do you
performance.
blow it or do you blow it or test them? All of them?
Some people do, some people don't.
So it's up to the client?
I prefer it's up to the client.
Mm.
I don't,
Mhm.
if I'm doing it, 1,000,000%, yeah.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
the ones that we've done with the blower door test, because we actually do some of that work as well, you've really got to stuff it up to get over 1.
Mm. Mhm.
You've got to try hard to get over 1.
You've got the internal air barrier, you said. So there's actually
It's already
the
in there.
internal
It's already in
membrane.
there. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. That's a standard. So it's pretty hard to get over 1. It's pretty hard to get over 1. if you wanted to get down to, Trent from Red Cedar, he did one without panel system going back a while ago. They'd never touched it before, got 0.5 without trying too hard. So we bring them in from Poland. The company we work with has been going for 35 years. They've done thousands. Camille, who runs it, called me a little while ago. I said, how'd your last one go? He said, we had a really bad one. We were at 0.89.
Which by Australian standards is
He,
very, very tight. But
Well, I mean, we talk about the performance gap, and there was a guy who was being trained to do some airtightness testing in Canberra, where I'm living most of the time. There's some estates up north called Taylor, is an area. And so Peter went out there and did 3 airtightness tests on brand new homes, 23, 24 and 26. Brand new.
What?
Just finished. Yep.
For those
23,
listening,
24.
23, 24 and 26 air changes, does it have a roof? Like, that is extremely, extremely, extremely leaky.
Yep.
And which
So
climate was this in
particularly when
Canberra?
NCC is 10. NCC is 10, right?
NCC is 10. The old Australian average was 15.4. The new Australian average is 6.8 or something like that. So 24, 25, 26 is absolutely insane. How careless.
Yep, exactly.
Oh my God. When was this?
Yeah, but you can, pardon? This was,
when
are we now? Early this year?
Oh my goodness. There's no excuse.
No. I won't name and shame. We know who the people are, the builders, but shocking.
There must have been holes big enough to fit, I don't know. What's a big animal?
I know.
A big animal.
It's hard to have words when you hear it, right?
Yeah. I mean, with modern construction methodologies, there is absolutely no excuse for that.
There were holes around the windows. It was shocking. And these are brand new.
Gosh. All right, let's go to the other
Brand
end
new.
of the spectrum. So you went straight into passive house. So you looked at all of the, I don't know how you came to that conclusion. You found passive house as a earliest part of your design career. You found passive house. How did you find passive house so quickly? And how did you know that that was the route you were going to take?
Rabbit holes. Lots of rabbit holes.
Research.
Yeah, it was. So my old businesses, we were known about working on global best practice. So all I did was look at it and say, on the research heads, where are we going? Okay, we need highly energy efficient, resilient, sustainable homes. What is global best practice on that? So I just ran down rabbit hole after rabbit hole, and this is back in 2016, 17, and that was the best I could find. So I just thought, right, I'll just start there.
Do that.
So it was great because that became my basis, and I didn't have to, as a lot of people have said to me, I didn't have to unlearn things.
Yeah, definitely.
But it was terrible because that was my basis. And then I went on sites and thought, what is this crap?
Yeah.
What is that? And then I became totally and utterly disillusioned with so much that was going on. So it's been a benefit, but a hindrance at the same time. But I'm not one of the people who's, there's some of the passive house people, and sorry to some of the people, I'm not that true believer of the passive house. To me, passive house it's just a bunch of building sites that, came about. For those who don't know, passive house came about out of a research process by the German government trying to find ways to reduce heating and cooling loads by 70%. So that was where it all came from. And this
I actually interviewed Wolfgang Feist on the podcast a few weeks ago, the founder of Passive House. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So he gave us a bit of
fun.
It was really good.
Yeah. He's been following me on LinkedIn now, I think. So had a couple of chats. Anyway, so people will probably know that background. So for me to get, for him to come up with that, he had to give some numbers and some parameters around some targets to be able to call something a thing which just happens to be called passive house, right? So for me, if you use that building science, it doesn't matter where in the world, whether you're in Darwin, whether you're in Tasmania, whether you're in the middle of Uzbekistan, or it doesn't matter. Science is science, right? So for me, it was taking that science and trying to use what was appropriate for those different areas. So I don't care if people get a passive house standard or not. If they want to, that's fantastic. But if we can at least do the verifications, at least do the work, at least understand what the parameters are, and then check to make sure that things are actually getting built to that standard, then that's what we want to do. That's what I want to do. I'd rather have lots of people doing a bit better than a couple of people doing amazingly, because that's not impact. A couple of people doing amazingly is usually rich people, being able to tell their
Yeah.
friends,
Yeah.
as opposed to, it's like with the stuff we do for the volume builders. I tell the guys, if we can get everybody up 0.1 or 0.2 stars, that's more impact globally than us doing 10 passive houses or 20 passive houses or whatever.
Uh-huh.
So, if we can get that little bit, and then we take them to the next level, using that science, using the research, then that's more global impact.
So what do you think are the most important parts of passive house or of building science that Australia needs to adopt?
Airtightness, and then understanding what airtightness means to moisture management. They're the two combinations of two different after design. So, I mean, most people in Australia, as soon as we talk about passive house, talk about passive solar, right? And a lot of the passive, I actually don't think that PHPP, which is the passive house modelling tool, I don't think it takes into account the warmer climates as well as what it should. I think it's too skewed towards cold climates. So I do think we need to look at shading, whether that's intermittent shade, variable shading, or whatever that might be. We need to look at that a lot more. So design is absolute key. But once we get past the design, it's actually verification and airtightness, I think, is the number one. And then obviously windows, because the windows make such an enormous difference.
I couldn't agree more.
Again, I can talk about this for 3 or 4 hours, and I know we've only got
No, I couldn't agree more. Airtightness is the underpinning element of any high performing or well performing building, and it's the easiest to achieve. Well, it's the easiest to check, and once you understand what you are aiming for, it's relatively easy to achieve as well. So, yeah, I couldn't agree more. I think thermal bridging is also something that gets missed, and that plays into the whole airtightness moisture management thing as well.
Yeah, I agree. I think the biggest thing is training, right?
Mm.
And like, we had a prefab home that we did in Canberra, and we did an airtightness test in the morning, right? And then I can't remember what the number was off the top of my head. But then the sparkies were coming in later on, and we said to them, right, as you're poking things through from outside, little tiny hole, right? And then, we're going to seal it off afterwards and all the rest of it, right? You got that? Yep. Came back in the afternoon, did another blower door test for some reason, I don't know why, and it had gone up.
Mhm.
And nobody could work out why. And then we went and looked at all the penetrations, and they're all like that. And there were about 3 or 4 of them, right? And it was just going straight out. And that was the conversation in the morning. Don't do that. Come back in the afternoon. And that's what they've done. So they had to
Yeah.
jamming it all back up and all the rest. So, excuse me, it's that training and understanding, and taking the trades on the journey of understanding what the consequence of their actions are,
Yeah.
and then finding those trades who actually have ears and are prepared to listen to what that is,
Mhm.
and then do something about it. It's like, poking insulation in and actually making sure it goes right up to the beams or the posts, and not
Yeah.
leaving gaps.
Yeah.
Again, you can say what you like. I looked at a prefab manufacturer. There's a promotional site for a prefab manufacturer. I won't say which one, and all the insulation's falling out. It's like,
Not a
you've got
good
to be
look.
kidding. No,
Mm.
not at
Yeah.
all. Gaps
Yeah.
everywhere. So, but that's not them. It's, the staff or the trades not doing what they're meant to do. So I think a lot of training is really required on that.
Yeah, for sure. That collaboration piece is so important, and it comes up time and time again. Early involvement, early
Yeah.
design, early collaboration on design, and then collaboration on site. I was speaking to someone a client on the phone today, and it was sort of impressing upon them the importance of collaboration. They're just sort of moving into this space, and it's I it's just so important to get everyone on site on the same page, isn't it? It's so important, because you can design all you want, put all the fancy red lines on a page and specify all the different products that you like. But if the people on site are not putting it together in the correct way, it's a waste of time. So,
Which is why, and this is entirely the reason I went down prefab, and whether it was ours or whether it was somebody else's, it didn't matter. For me, I grew up, my dad's an engineer and came out of the automotive, in the auto industry. So I grew up with that precision sort of inbuilt into us. My dad was possibly a bit extreme on that, but but that precision, and you do something in the factory where you've coded it and it's done. It's hard to get. The way I look at it is, if you do it in a factory, it's hard to get wrong, and if you do it by hand, it's hard to get right.
mm,
So that's the way that I look at it. And I'm not saying that some people can't do it. There are some amazing builders who can do things by hand that, that are truly amazing and truly fantastic. But it's harder to do. And there are more chances for things to go wrong than if you do it in a factory.
The thing
So
I like about
that's,
prefab is that it stays dry. If you build it in a factory, it's not going to get rained on.
and it was interesting. I was looking at a manual um, for the guys that we work with Tardex, and there was something about installation, and it was talking about if this is left out and if it gets wet, do not cover it up. Do not,
Mm,
because
mm,
it's all just standard stuff. Camille was telling me the other, well, he was actually showing me. So they've got moisture managers. They test the moisture of the wood, and if
yep.
it's not in that 13 to 16%, they send it back. So they know that it's not going in for anything like.
Hmm.
And I've
Good.
never seen that. I've never seen a moisture test in Australia. But just
A
never
couple of
seen it.
my
Perhaps
clients do it.
yep,
It's
great,
something that I talk
fantastic.
about. Yeah, the timber framing code says 14%. The timber should not be more than 14% moisture content. I think 16%
Hmm.
is the upper limit of what is acceptable from a mold growth perspective. But yeah. That's another part of as-built construction that we can't control. We have less control over out on a building site. So yeah, I like that element of prefab for sure.
We've got a place going up literally across the road from our own home at the moment. I'd want to leave it out for a couple of weeks to dry out from where it's been
Yeah,
in the last little while. No,
yeah,
because
I
it's
yeah,
it's it's sodden. It is absolutely
yeah,
sodden.
yeah. I drive past projects all the time with roof blankets exposed to the rain for weeks on end, and just timbers and nonchalant builders who say it'll dry. You know, how long, when, and will that be before
And how are
insulation
you
and
checking?
cladding?
How are you verifying?
And how
Yeah.
do you know? Exactly. You mentioned that current building methodologies aren't going to meet future health, comfort, or energy targets. What do you think is going to become the new normal in the next decade to address this?
So I think it's going to need to evolve pretty quickly. And I think the word that we're going to hear more and more is resilience. And we're starting to hear it a little bit, but I think it's going to become the word around building in the future. And that resilience is going to be, that the house will be resilient from outside, that the house will be able to operate on its own if we have climates which knock out power, which create issues for everybody. But it's also resilience from a health point of view, because I think I look at passive house or airtight structures or whatever, and I actually think that the health benefits of having a thermally stable environment in the very short term possibly outweigh the energy efficiency side of things. And how the hell do you put a number on that?
Mm,
I've got somebody who works for me, I won't say her name, but you know her, who is moving house at the moment and has severe allergies and asthma. And she said to me the other day, there were hundreds of places that were for rent that she was moving home. There were only 3 or 4 that she could apply for because of how they were built, when they were built, mold, and all the
mm,
rest of it, because it was going to
yeah.
affect her health too much. We've got one we're helping to design, and we'll probably do prefab for in Adelaide, actually. And their daughter she's profoundly blind, but
Hmm.
also has some other issues. So this house, if she goes outside of like 20 to 25 degrees, she has a complete meltdown. Her body just doesn't cope
Mm,
with it.
goodness.
So they're building a smaller house to a really high performance with very low light coming in as well, because there are quite a lot of issues with this poor girl.
Wow.
So we're designing this around that. So they've got a passive house, not really passive house, but a thermally comfortable home,
Hmm.
all around doing the right thing for their daughter. And
Mm,
you would have seen the studies around mental health benefits and everything for thermally comfortable spaces. We know that if we keep within a certain parameter, our bodies don't go into stress, and therefore our physical and mental health is better. And we had one client who is one of the actually we've got 2 now, who are two of the most senior people in the Defence Force Medical Corps for them, and both of them have retrofitted or in the process of retrofitting all their windows and upgrading everything because they know the health benefits for their
mm,
families, right? And what was really cool is we did the retrofit of some windows and doors and everything for one house. And it's a lovely house, but at a thermal point of view, it's the wrong way round. It's just old. It's all this sort of stuff. We got some insulation, put it all in. The best comment was from the three little girls. I got three young girls, and I just got known as the window guy because we were helping them with windows. Their comment was that they were able to run around without their shoes and socks on, and that they'd come from Townsville to Canberra, and that the air felt more like Townsville, is it wasn't dry and cold and blowing through and all the rest of it. All of a sudden, there was a little bit something to it. And these little kids were just happier because they were in a better space. It was so cool. So I think having thermally stable, when we're talking resilience, it's resilient from the external elements. It's resilient to shocks from maybe losing power. We talk about losing power in the future and that it might become a bit more intermittent. So are we able to go, particularly with the crazy good deals you can get on solar and batteries at the moment, are there pathways to become less reliant or non-reliant on the grid?
Mm-hmm.
Are there, having something thermally stable, so if it's 45 degrees outside, that you're not getting, you're not too affected by heat. It snowed in Jindabyne yesterday in December.
Wow. What?
How
Wow.
yeah, crazy, huh? I was here in 35 degrees, just about melting, and I got a call from a client who's up there, and it was snowing.
Wow.
So all these different things, but I think the resilience very much comes down to as well that the house is going to survive. It's going not just that you're able to survive through it, but the house will survive all these things. Again, or would have been dealing with that an airtight envelope is what is going to help in a bushfire. Having something like a HRVs. So we've got a HRV in my office, and through the bushfires of 2019-20, my house, which is a 1961 beautiful mid-century thing, but upstairs was like pea soup.
Mm-hmm.
But the office, we didn't have an air conditioner. We had zero smoke egress, and it
Mm-hmm.
cost me. And we were all down in my office the whole time, and it cost me $20 to replace an extra set of filters. That was it.
Mm-hmm.
All right.
So,
So at a
your
health
office has been
resilience,
retrofit. That
yeah,
area of the house.
yeah,
Yeah.
not to passive house level, but it's 2 air changes per hour, and it's all the rest. So we don't have an aircon in there. We have a little bit of heating because we don't get it in. It's it just works.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So I think they're the sort of things that need to become the norm. And I think as governments may hopefully one day start looking at getting out of silos and looking at holistically about what a house can do for society, then I hope like crazy that we'll come out of that silo of, well, this is what a house is, as opposed to, well, this house is going to help from a health point of view.
Yeah.
So I could rant about this forever. There's one thing that I'm on my high horse about at the moment. And I was shown a design, and we were asked to tender for a prefab for a government job. I looked at the design. I thought, this is a bit weird. What's happening with this design? And anyways, the living dining kitchen was downstairs, and then there was a bedroom downstairs, and there were 3 or 4 bedrooms upstairs. I can't remember, a little open area, but the whole living dining kitchen was actually closed off. And so under legislation, they only had to provide heating and cooling for the living dining kitchen area. The rest of it had no conditioning at all.
Mm-hmm.
And I spoke to the builder. I said, well, so what happens with this? And he said, well, we're constantly having to go back. This is what's mandated by the government. We're constantly having to go back and prove that we've put insulation in, prove that we've done all the rest of it, because all the tenants are complaining that it's too hot or too cold.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Now, sorry, going down the research path, I can't remember the name of the lady, but somebody did a PhD, I think, on the performance in Melbourne of as you changed social housing and what happened with that. And the health and societal differences as you change that were enormous, because if you think about social housing, and that's generally speaking, it's a lower socioeconomic group,
Mm-hmm.
the kids are sick and mum and or dad can't go to work because somebody's got to come home and stay out looking after the kids. So if that's happening perpetually because the house or the lived environment is bad, then the parent can't go to work. Now, if the parent can't go to work, they're not going to have stable employment. If they don't have stable employment, then what happens about putting food on the table? And then what happens then on the social impact and what are we paying our taxes for and blah, and around
Mhm.
and around it all goes, right? So
Mhm.
the social impact of actually having a house that, we knew by looking at this thing that people there were going to get sick because it was going to either be too hot. They didn't even have bloody fans in the thing,
Mm.
not even a fan in the bedroom.
Wow.
And it gets quite warm in
Yeah.
Canberra
Mm.
and quite
Yeah,
cold.
quite warm and quite cold. I've often lamented about the disconnect between the housing industry or the building industry and the health industry. There is such a strong link there that doesn't seem to be made, doesn't seem to be addressed, to the point where, you go to the GP for any number of ailments and they don't think about your living environment as a contributor to your health, generally speaking. Chronic inflammatory response syndrome is not commonly understood by the medical fraternity. Mold illness is not understood. So, yeah, it's a huge gap and I don't know who's going to fill it. But all we can do is, I guess, help people build healthier homes and so they don't have to use the medical
Exactly. I
fraternity
mean,
as
and
much.
and again, things like what you're doing with this podcast, hopefully, reaches more and more people to be able to, the way that I look at the research and everything that we do is to create an environment for people to make an informed choice. That's all it is, right? I don't want to say you have to do this or you have to do that or whatever. It's not my house, not my choice. But for people to make decisions without understanding what that means, then I think, for what is generally speaking the biggest investment of somebody's life, I think is a false economy. And this is what I talk about to a lot of people that come to us and I say, look, we could do a passive house analysis. We could do all these other things. Don't have to build it. Just know what's going to happen, right? Make choices. Use this to make a choice. If you want to go and spend that money on gold taps, go and put it on gold taps. That's fine. That's your choice, right? If you want to say that I've got a budget and I want the gold taps, but I want a high performing home, then build smaller. So take the choice, take out that media room, right? And invest in something a little bit better there. Yeah,
Yeah.
make those choices in an informed way. Don't be pushed one way or the other, or make a choice without the information. But it's not up to us to build it into them. It's up to us to give them the information so that people can make a choice.
Yeah, that comment you made about it's not about the money until it's about the money, and then it's all about the money. I mean, housing and construction is always going to be primarily about money and budget. But what you say, you've mentioned it a couple of times now about building smaller. This is one of the key messages that you of course you can you've got a budget. You can fit a better performing home within that budget. You just have to adapt to that budget. Just build, like you say, build smaller. People don't want to hear that though.
I did a talk in China, going back a couple of years ago now, last year. Anyway, and we have the largest per capita lived environment in the world of 89 square meters per person. I didn't realize that New Zealand. Somebody sent me something on LinkedIn the other day saying that New Zealand was trying to catch up. But if we take New Zealand out, the next one was the US at 77. So we're almost, we're 15, 16, 17% bigger than the next biggest. You look through Europe and it's 40 square meters per person.
Yeah, wow.
Why do we need to be building 89? And I'm not saying that we need to go and get a little tiny home, right? I'm not, a proponent of tiny home. You need space, particularly with multi-generational living. But you need to just think about what is enough. Yeah. What is enough? So the people that I'm here helping with their prefab home at the moment, they have some friends who are building a 600 square meter home for the two of them in retirement in the hope that the grandkids are going to come and hang out with them every now and again.
600 square.
Now, yeah. So, firstly, how the hell do you clean that puppy? Right?
Yeah. Well,
So,
obviously they can afford cleaners.
Well, I'm not so sure. And they're from the building industry, so they know.
Yeah.
Which is, I just don't understand.
Yeah.
I've got 5 kids. Second marriage, we've got 5 kids between us, and I can't wait to get into a small home. I cannot wait. I don't want it all. It's somebody else, another family should have our home, right? Because it's a great family home and they'd be able to use it. They'd also have a very lovely passive house level office, but that's probably the only thing that's keeping us there.
Yeah.
But building smaller, building smarter. I'm working with somebody at the moment. We're looking at we've done a 120 square meter design and a 160 square meter design, where we're We're turning it basically through design and then management, turning it into an energy making machine. So through design and orientation, all the rest of it, and then having a very tight envelope to make this thing into creating as much energy. And then the secret sauce is, what do you do with those excess green electrons, right? So how do you optimize the use of those in society? But these are going to be 120, 160, but there's nothing we've done that's bigger than 160 square meters.
I guess if
Don't
you
need it.
design it properly, then that can be quite a lot of space if all of the space is used.
Totally.
Yeah.
Totally. Keep hallways to a minimum. You don't need a 4 meter by 5 meter bloody bedroom for everybody.
Mm.
You also don't want to have them too small either, because you need to be able to go through intergenerationally. Like, as the teenagers need some room.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you can't get all your clothes. You need room to throw all your clothes on the floor. You don't, you need a bit of floor space for that.
Exactly. You need room for your floor drope.
Exactly. The floor drope. I've never heard that before. I'm going to use that.
Oh, I've got 2 teenagers. They're all
Tessa,
about their floor drope.
my youngest daughter, I'm going to be using that on you. Yeah, the floor drope.
All right. What, in your opinion, are the biggest barriers we're facing? We talked about a lot of them, but let's make it, a succinct question. The biggest barriers we're facing in achieving high performance homes, making them accessible here in Australia.
Okay, so there's about 400 parts to that. So the biggest thing is thinking about it early. So early on in the design phase. So if it is part of the initial design thinking and the design thinking all the way through, it's actually not that hard. If it is considered a fair way into the design process, then it can become quite difficult, or it can become quite expensive. It's the best way to do it is to think about it and integrate it into the thinking from day one, right? So that's why I think people who work, I'm not saying passive house designers or, whatever, are better designers. They're not necessarily. But I think where designers who have had training in that area have it intrinsically as just part of the thought process.
Mm-hmm.
So it clearly then defines how that pathway is going to go.
Yes.
So, quite often I'll go onto a site or whatever, and you can actually look at the site, look at the orientation, look at the trees, look at everything else. And I can pretty much work out what the shape of the house is going to look like in that first meeting.
Mm-hmm.
And then I'll go and design, or somebody in the team will go and design off the back of that. That's because the clients have approached us because they want not necessarily high performance, but they want an energy efficient, comfortable, healthy home, right? So if you start with that as part of your process, it defines part of the design of the layout, at least, not necessarily with, not the cosmetic component, but the actual floor plate and how that works. That can be worked out and resolved relatively simply if you keep that thought process. So, and I think a lot of the younger designers and architects coming through, they have that as part of the training. It's intrinsic, and it's something that everybody knows and understands. Whereas, I go and we do a lot of work with different architects, and I know some of the architects, and they're only in their early 40s and they're still not doing stuff in 3D. Everything's done in 2D. So, it's that training and that pathway that you come through. So
Meanwhile, you've got other designers doing VR.
Yeah. So I think that's number one. The second is, and what's enough? What is enough? So if you want a high performance home and you've got a budget, then work with a builder early to understand, the whole design and build context. A lot of builders will do the design and build on the way through. Having that done with a higher performance home and having that knowledge of what the build is going to be on the way through will enable people to make those choices through the process. A stat that still rots my socks, and I don't know whether it's the same in Adelaide, but in Canberra, only 30% of designs get built. And even Frank Lloyd Wright, only 50% of his designs actually got built. Because by the time the thing was designed and then they got a builder, half the people carked it because they fell over and knocked their head when they fell over how much it was going to cost. So that, I think, is a really important part, because you can design, everybody can get excited, but if it ends up the money's too much, you either don't go ahead, or you change it completely, or you build crap.
Yeah.
Right? So I think having that understanding of what that is, and I call it agile designing. My come from a project management side of things, but for those people who understand agile management, you run a sprint. You sort of go so far, you review it, you understand it. Has it met the brief? Is it meeting the brief? Do we need to pivot, change, go back, whatever, and then go again, right? And that way, I think people can understand and make those choices along through those sprints, for lack of a better term, to actually get what they want. Or if it's not going to work, fail fast, get out early. Don't go and spend 20, 30, 50 grand, whatever the number is, on designs and all the rest of it, and then turn around and everybody's grumpy as hell because it doesn't go ahead. Nobody wins out of that. Nobody wins out of that. Doesn't make any sense to me. So, having that process, it's like with the prefab. A lot of people come to us and say, well, how do we integrate that into the thinking and all the rest of it? And have you come across DFMA, or design for manufacturing and assembly? Right. Here's a new rabbit hole for you. Right.
There you go.
So DFMA, if you think about a car, right? Somebody goes and designs a BMW, right? And they've got to design a beautiful car, whatever, but you have to manufacture it, you have to assemble it, and it's got to meet a price point, right? So if you run that pathway through on building a home as well, so you've got to design it so the thing can get manufactured and assembled to that price point. Now that's a lot easier in a prefab scenario because you can use spans and understand like this. If you have a particular prefab system, it has particular engineering requirements that change over spans, right? So you can actually design it for that manufacturing assembly, and you can actually optimize that all the way through. It takes more time and more money up front, but it saves enormously on time and money at the back end. So, we try to integrate, even if we're not using prefab for clients, we try to integrate that sort of thinking all the way through. So if anybody's listening and you run down the DFMA rabbit hole, I find it incredibly interesting, but I'm a researcher.
Yeah. I think I have actually heard of it before somewhere in my travels, but it's not something I've ever looked into. So I will.
Happy to introduce you to somebody if you want somebody to come on here and talk about it to people. There's some really, really good exponents of that here in Australia.
All right, I'll keep it in mind. All right, Michael, we are at the end of our chat, but I have one conversation. I have one question that I ask all of my guests before we wrap up. And that is, out of everything that you've learned in your career, what is the one thing you want the listener to know?
That's a big one.
What's your hot tip, your piece of advice?
So if we're talking about a higher performing home, and that's what somebody wants to have, a healthier, more resilient home, is whomever you're working with, think about it. That's what I was saying before. Think about it early. Have it integrated into the thinking all the way through. Be prepared to make those choices and pivot through that pathway so that you actually get what you want and you can make that informed choice. But you can't come at it later on. Do it from day one.
Excellent advice. I would agree with that. That is definitely something that is extremely important to achieving the outcome with a high-performing home.
Yeah, I think if you start, or if anybody starts with that as part of the premise, then it can be achieved, or you walk away. One of the two. It can be done. It really can be done. And I'd love to make it out, Jess, that it's this secret sauce and all this sort of stuff, but it's not. It's usually just common sense. Have the sun coming in the right place, keep the sun out at the wrong place. Look out onto green. Make it relatively airtight, so you're not heating and cooling too much air. Build it properly. Build it once. Build it so that it lasts through generations. Don't build it so that it's going to fall over after 15 years, which a lot of stuff is actually built to.
Thanks, Michael. I really appreciate your time coming on the show.
Thank you very much for having me along.
All right, no worries.
Wonderful. Thank you very much.
Right.
Okay.
Bye.
Cheers.
That is all for today. Thanks so much for tuning in. There'll be another episode in a fortnight, so if you would like to listen into the types of conversations that I have all the time, please subscribe on your chosen platform. Rate the show, leave a comment, whatever you like, share with your friends and family. I'd love for you to spread the word about the Building Slayology Potty. There's a link in the episode description where you can head to a landing page, and there are some show notes there with relevant links and a full transcript of the show as well, and also links to my socials. So if you're not already, I'd love for you to follow along there too, as I share lots of building science and building biology tips. Thanks again. I'll be back in 2 weeks, so until then, happy healthy building.